You wake before dawn with the small, steady pride of someone who has made humility a practice. The apartment is quiet except for the kettle clicking on the stove and the soft scrape of your Bible as you turn the well-worn pages. Light slips through the blinds and paints a thin cross on the table where last night's envelope of bills sits folded beside a handwritten offering pledge. You pray in whispers that have become familiar: protect us from vanity, keep us clothed in dependence, let wealth not warp the soul. The words comfort you, and they also narrow the world. Outside, the city stirs, glossy storefronts, a man hailing a cab, possibilities that seem to accelerate without you. At work you pass a promotion that would require aggressive sales and public recognition. You tell yourself no, because visibility smells like pride. A friend mentions an investment, you smile and decline, citing contentment. At church you give what you can and sit on the back row, grateful that your sacrifice proves your devotion. Each refusal is righteous, each small sacrifice a quiet medal. Yet in the soft hours, late at night, the ledger in your mind keeps adding questions. Did I miss a chance to steward better? Am I honoring God, or hiding behind piety? The tension is subtle, cinematic, close-ups of your hands counting coins, a lingering shot of the cross on the wall, your jaw tightening as you listen to a sermon about the lilies and forgetfulness. You imagine God's approval at your restraint, but underneath there's a rising unease, like wind against a window you're afraid to open. Faith, you have been taught, is simple, small, sufficient. Ambition is loud and dangerous. So you measure your life by restraint, by how low you can keep your wants, equating abundance with arrogance. If that ache in your chest recognizes itself in these scenes, stay with me. In this series, we will gently ask the question you've avoided and trace the moment a different truth begins to speak to you, not to shame, but to reframe. If this resonates, tap like to honor the honesty, subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the turning point. And watch as, on a morning that looks like any other, a stillness breaks through and a single question arrives that will change the way you see money and sanctity. You wake before dawn to the small quiet of your kitchen, hands wrapped around a chipped mug, counting the margin between what you owe and what you owe yourself. The light through the blinds cuts the room into thin slats, the apartment smells faintly of coffee and yesterday's prayers. Your journal lies open on the table with the same question scrawled across the top: how can I honor God and still want more? The answer has always felt obvious: humility, sacrifice, the steady shrinking of desire until what remains is faithful and small. A phone vibrates on the counter. An email from a client offers a larger project, one that could change the rhythm of the next year. You read the numbers, feel the flutter of possibility, then the old voice returns: that would be pride. You imagine the eyes of your community, the whispered judgment: did you trade devotion for profit? You close the message, folding the opportunity into the same drawer where you keep receipts and wishes. On Sunday, you sit in the back pew, palms folded, the pastor's sermon drifting like smoke overhead. Scripture is read, verses about humility, about laying down treasures, and you nod because it feels safe to agree with words that keep you small. Beside you, a friend leans over, voice low and sincere. You should take that project, she says. You have a gift. Why hide it? You smile, the muscle twitch between gratitude and guilt. Her encouragement lands like a seed on dry soil. It wants to grow, but the soil has been packed tight by years of fear. At work, opportunities slip by like trains in the night. A promotion you could have pursued goes to someone else. You tell yourself it wasn't for you. A charitable cause asks you to fund a scholarship. Your instinct is yes, but the bank balance answers with a polite no. The tension gnaws. You want to give, to expand, to bless, but the rules you've obeyed keep tightening like a belt. Late one night, you stand at the window and watch a neighbor pull into a new car, laughing with the person beside them. You feel an odd mixture of joy for them and a familiar prickle of shame. Was their blessing vanity? Or did they steward something boldly? Your prayer becomes louder, almost pleading. Lord, am I wrong to want more so I can help more? The question hangs in the stillness, and for the first time in a long while, you wait, not to condemn, but to listen. A hush settles, and something shifts. What comes next is not the rebuke you expected, but a voice that will reframe everything. If this stirs something in you, Tap like, let this moment be shared, and subscribe with the bell so you won't miss the word that follows. You wake to the familiar sound of the kettle, small, steady, a metronome of restraint. The apartment smells of coffee and thrift, a thrift store lamp throws long, deliberate shadows across bills on the table. Across from you, a folder waits, a contract for a project that could change the numbers in your account, and perhaps, the shape of your life. Your thumb hesitates at the signature line as old lessons rise like ghosts, the quiet sermon from childhood that taught you to confuse lack with humility, the aunt who equated sacrifice with righteousness, the voice in your head that whispers, if you have much, you will boast. You tell yourself no one needs another testimony about the humble life. You tell yourself that striving is vanity. Outside, life offers contradictions. An old friend calls, excited about a business idea and says, you should join, your gifts would multiply this. A pastor mentions stewardship in a sermon and your chest tightens, the congregation nods while your heart resists. At work, a promotion is mentioned in passing, more responsibility, more salary, more visibility, and your mind catalogs reasons to decline. Better to keep the light low, you say aloud to your reflection, as if low profile equates to godliness. In the hush between appointments, you pray. The words are familiar petitions, help, provision, wisdom, but there's a new ache beneath them, a grief for opportunities left as if waiting rooms for courage. You remember a face in the mirror decades ago, eyes bright with faith, not fearful of success, only intent on being useful. Where did that fearless devotion go? The more you cling to the idea that poverty proves devotion, the more life feels like a series of closed doors. A friend confronts you gently one evening, what if abundance is part of your calling? You laugh, defensive. Isn't that pride? She asks. Her question lands like a pebble in still water, and the ripple wakes something inside you. You stand on your balcony, the city breathing below, and for the first time the lines between faith and fear begin to blur. Then, in the silence that follows, a presence settles, quiet, intimate, and unmistakable. You are about to hear a truth that will unsettle and liberate. Dawn finds you at the kitchen table again, light slanting through blinds, a bowl of coffee gone cold because your mind raced ahead of your hands. Receipts lie like confessions, tuition, repairs, a promise you once made to give more. You cradle a small notebook where you tally needs and note opportunities you turned away, an acquaintance's quiet offer to join a modest enterprise, a training course you declined because learning to earn felt like betraying simplicity. In the hush, you whisper prayers that have learned to sound like apologies. You remember the exact rhythm of the refusal. I won't take that, you told a friend last month, voice steady though your throat burned. If I prosper, I'll lose something sacred. She looked at you with kind impatience. You don't lose God by growing, she said. You amplify what you can give. The words landed like seeds on dry soil and did not sprout, yet. Outside your window, a neighbor backs out of a driveway into a new car, the sunlight catching chrome you once only admired from afar. Your chest tightens not from envy but from a curious ache, as if something inside you is both ashamed and hopeful. At church the pastor reads a passage about stewardship and the crowd murmurs amen, you nod because that is what faithful people do. Later you linger and ask him a question you hardly expected to ask aloud. Is poverty ever noble? His reply is simple and patient, poverty is not a spiritual medal. Faith asks for faithful management, not self-imposed scarcity. The words unsettle you, like a map redrawn beneath your feet. Yet old truths have roots. You sense the story you were raised on, humble equals holy, leveraging its power over your choices. That night, in the dim of your room, you open the notebook and rewrite a line you've repeated 1,000 times, wealth is pride. You cross it out and stare at the blankness that follows. It is there, in the silence after the erasure, that everything tilts. If this resonates, if the tension between devotion and provision stirs something honest in you, press like and subscribe. There is a message coming that rewrites this struggle. Then, when the house is still and the world has stopped speaking, a voice arrives, soft, not condemning, but so exact it feels like a new dawn. What it says will change the way you steward everything. You wake before dawn, the house quiet except for the small hum of the refrigerator and the faint city light slipping through the blinds. You sit at the kitchen table with a battered notebook and a cup of coffee gone cold, turning over the words that settled like stones in your chest when God first spoke, a gentle, radical correction: prosperity is not a sin, it is stewardship. The revelation arrives in images now, not rules. You see a worn pair of shoes repaired and given to a neighbor, a small clinic with new equipment funded by someone who once thought wealth was shame, children singing because a roof was mended. Each image loosens the knot of fear that had kept you small. But habits are stubborn. You catch yourself reaching for old defenses, whispers from sermons that equated riches with pride, a relative's scornful tone when money was discussed, your own anxious arithmetic that equated abundance with temptation. The room feels crowded with ghosts. You listen, and a softer voice pushes back. What if your capacity to give grows? It asks. You imagine scales tipping toward service instead of self. The thought is frightening and exhilarating at once. Outside, the neighborhood wakes, the baker opens his window, a child races a bicycle down the sidewalk, someone drops coins into a busker's hat. You realize stewardship does not demand extravagance, it demands clarity and courage. You begin to rehearse new language for your life. I will steward what I receive, you tell the empty kitchen, so others can flourish. The sentence lands like a promise. You test it. A small decision, redirecting a fraction of your monthly allowance from fear to an emergency fund and a giving envelope, feels like stepping onto ice. Your heart battles with doubt, what if you fail? But each small act of faith becomes evidence. A friend calls, surprised and grateful when you help cover a medical bill. A local ministry sends a photo of supplies you helped fund. These moments are quiet confirmations: abundance, managed well, multiplies good. Night falls and you close your notebook with a steadier hand. The old shame still lingers, but it's slowing its grip. There's a next step, practical and unavoidable: habits to build, boundaries to set, resources to allocate in service of something larger than fear. Tomorrow you will begin to put structure to the revelation, and everything centers on that first practical choice. You watch opportunities slip past like trains you refuse to board, a colleague asking you to join a small venture, a neighbor offering a partnership that could have steadied your months, a church member suggesting you manage a modest fund for outreach. Each offer arrives wrapped in possibility, and then, because of the quiet vow you made to humility, you fold it away. Nights grow long with the same prayer pushed against your teeth: Lord, keep me humble, while mornings bring the same thin ledger of expenses and hopes deferred. The tension tightens until it sits behind your ribs like a stone. One dawn, exhausted from the tug-of-war between faith and fear, you find yourself in the back pew of a little chapel, light cutting through dust motes like an answer. You pray the words you always have, but this time the silence answers differently. It is not thunder or reproach, it is a voice at once intimate and vast. Poverty is not your badge, it says. I do not call you to empty-handedness as proof of devotion. I call you to stewardship. The sentence lands with a curious weight. You want to argue, teach me, test me, yet the voice keeps speaking, patient and precise. Wealth given to the faithful can become a channel for mercy, for creativity, for multiplyings you cannot yet imagine. To prosper is not to exalt oneself, it is to be entrusted with means to serve, to sow, to heal. Images unfold: a small farm irrigated where once the soil cracked, a family receiving relief because someone said yes, a child learning because a teacher was paid to stay. A confession rises from you, small and trembling: I feared that wanting more would make me proud. The reply is gentle. Desire without deception is not pride. Wisdom without action is not faith. Learn how to steward what I give. You feel the stone in your chest crack. Tears come the shape of relief, anger at wasted years tastes bitter and then sweet as determination. The old binary, wholly poor or worldly rich, shifts into a horizon where faith and finances can walk together. You stand and promise, aloud if only to the empty chapel, to unlearn the lies that bound you and to learn the disciplines that honor what God entrusts to you. There is both a chastening and a freeing in that vow. If this truth moves something in you, consider staying with this path. There is a practical road ahead to be learned, not reckless gain, but faithful growth. In the next part, you will begin to see what those first steps towards sacred stewardship actually look like. You wake before dawn, the house still holding the hush of sleep, and for the first time in years you reach not for a prayer of resignation but for a ledger. The lamp throws a warm circle over receipts and a notebook where you once scrawled excuses. Tonight you write plans. Your hands tremble, not from fear alone but from the strange thrill of permission God gave you in that quiet moment to move beyond poverty as virtue and into purposeful abundance. At the kitchen table, you speak aloud the promise you heard: prosperity is stewardship. It feels strange to voice it, as if naming it makes it real. Your partner, rubbing sleep from their eyes, studies you. Are you sure? They ask, half hope, half worry. I am, you say, and you mean it. You explain the change, that generosity won't come from scarcity masquerading as holiness, but from disciplined growth that multiplies what you give. They listen, then smile, and in that smile you find courage. The day unfolds into small, stubborn acts. You set a simple budget, not a box to live small, but a map to purposeful giving. You schedule a meeting with a financial coach recommended by your church, and the conversation is not about greed but about responsibility, emergency funds, debt strategy, wise investing. Each suggestion lands like a plank across a previously shaky bridge. When fear whispers that you are betraying humility, you answer with a practical prayer and a plan. You test this new rhythm with a modest, deliberate gift, a surprise repair for an elderly neighbor's roof, paid without fanfare. Watching rainwater stop dripping from their ceiling, you feel a new joy, a justice done. The old shame, the idea that needing comfort means spiritual failure, loosens. Someone else is warmed, your heart expands. Not everything is easy. Old voices from community and memory demand proof, and you find yourself guarding against pride. You work to translate revelation into habit, automated savings, monthly giving, accountability with a trusted friend. Each small win is a sermon in action, each slip a lesson in humility. You are learning to see money not as a measure of your soul but as a tool in God's hands. The path ahead still asks for courage, bigger decisions, bolder faith. In the next part, you will confront the practical structures that keep scarcity alive and discover the first concrete systems that turn revelation into lasting prosperity. If this shift moves you, like and subscribe to walk the rest of this journey together. Dawn slips through the kitchen blinds like a kind hand, painting the table where a single ledger lies open, its pages worn at the edges from years of careful subtraction. You sit there a long time, fingers tracing numbers that once felt like commandments: give less, save more, hide the rest. The memory of a voice, calm, unjudging, lingers in the room as if the walls themselves had listened. Poverty is not a badge of faith, it said. The words are both rebuke and balm. They stir something in your chest that has been quietly tired for too long. You rise and walk to the window, watching the street come alive, neighbors carrying produce, a child with a mismatched backpack. A neighbor catches your eye and smiles, you return it and realize, with a small, astonished tenderness, that generosity hasn't been a posture for you so much as a foreign language. Your hands, rough from work and holy in intent, itch to learn it. Inside, the house murmurs with questions, old catechisms of scarcity whispering that to seek increase is to court pride. You kneel, not for penance but to listen. The prayer this time is different, it is less about proving humility and more about asking for wisdom. The answer comes not as thunder but as direction, stewardship, creativity, responsibility. The idea unspools like a ribbon, money as a tool for healing, not a test of sanctity. Tears come, soft and unexpected, because the relief feels like grace. You call an old friend, someone whose hands have also built and given and made peace with gain. The conversation is practical, full of gentle instruction: create margins, invest in what multiplies good, tithe with intention, teach generosity to your children. There is laughter when you admit how fearful you were of being seen as prideful, and a shared silence when you both acknowledge how many opportunities were missed while you guarded against the wrong sin. Later, you stand at the whiteboard in a tiny office, sketching a plan, not flashy, but faithful. A budget that breathes, a plan to grow resources to bless others, a promise to give that is intentional, not performative. It feels like stepping from the shore into a current that will carry you somewhere wide and useful. If this shift touched you, if that quiet permission to prosper without shame sparks a new hope, give this message a like. Let that small act multiply the reach of what you've heard. Subscribe and tap the bell to walk with us. In the next segment you will watch the first tangible test of this new obedience, a choice that asks everything and changes everything. Dawn finds you at the kitchen table, not with an apology this time, but with a pen and a ledger. The light through the blinds draws clean lines across receipts and a small jar labeled serve. Your hands tremble for a moment, old shame lives in those tremors, but you breathe and remind yourself of the voice that changed your story. Prosperity is stewardship, it said, calmly, like a lamp placed at your feet. You start small. A budget becomes a prayerful act, not counting coins out of fear, but aligning resources with intention. You whisper aloud, if I have this, I will give that, and the words feel like vows, not performances. You call an old friend, the one who always judged success as arrogance. He hears your patience, the steadiness behind new choices. You sound different, he says. Not showy, just sure. You realize conviction carries a humility that poverty never demanded. At work, you refuse the frantic scramble for scraps. You choose projects that pay fairly and bless widely. In a coffee shop later, you overhear a young entrepreneur saying, I want to grow but I'm scared of being proud. You slide into the conversation and tell her, gently, the truth you learned, growth is obedience when the goal is to serve others with what you gain. Her eyes widen. You both laugh softly, relief and permission shared over bitter coffee. Generosity becomes your laboratory. You seed a small scholarship at your church, fund a repair for a neighbor's roof, and mentor someone who reminds you of your earlier fears. Each time you open your hands, the old belief that money corrupts falls away a little more. Stewardship looks like spreadsheets and like warm hands receiving help, like accountability meetings and late-night prayers asking for wisdom and investment, not for excuses to remain small. Fear still knocks. When it does, you walk back to that kitchen table, read your notes, and remember the voice that reframed your poverty as misbelief. The path isn't a straight line, there will be tests of faith and moments when old shame tries to reclaim the steering wheel. But you feel steadier now, rooted in purpose. If this shift resonates, stay with me. Next we'll walk through the exact habits and first financial steps you can take to make this faith practical, and how to face the first real test of your new course. If this touched you, show it, like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss what comes next. Morning light slips through half-closed blinds as you sit at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee steaming beside a worn leather notebook. The coins you once counted with trembling hands are no longer tokens of shame but markers of possibility. Your fingers trace the inked numbers, a budget, an emergency cushion, a plan for giving. The room holds ordinary sounds, distant traffic, a neighbor's lawnmower, but inside you something has changed, a quiet courage hums beneath the surface. Do you really think this is right? Your partner asks, watching you fold the first check for the community pantry. Their voice carries the doubt you once carried, the question of whether blessing others while pursuing growth is selfish. You meet their eyes and answer without bravado, it's stewardship. We were given resources to multiply good, not to hide them away. The relief on their face is a small sunrise. You make calls you used to avoid. A meeting with a trusted advisor is calm, practical, terms explained plainly, risks mapped honestly. You learn to separate greed from wisdom, humility from self-denial. You set aside a percentage for tithes, another for investments that align with your values, and a modest portion for delight, books, a morning hike, a meal shared with friends. Each decision is prayerful, not fearful. Later, at the community center, you hand over that first donation for after-school tutoring. A little boy looks up and grins, and for the first time in years your chest loosens. Generosity tastes like sunlight, unexpected, warming, alive. A mentor catches your hand and says, "We weren't designed to hoard blessings. We're conduits." The words land like rain on dry ground. Old fears still surface when an offer arrives, an opportunity to expand a business, to step into abundance beyond what you'd planned. Pride knocks at the door, whispering the old lie that growth betrays devotion. You pause, breathe, and remember the voice that reframed poverty as neither badge nor path. You pray, then take the next practical step, contracts reviewed, counsel sought, promises written down. You are not finished. The path ahead will test you, reshape you, and ask for courage you haven't needed before. But tonight, as you close the notebook, there is an honest peace. Tomorrow will demand action, and in the next moment of this journey, you will see how those actions ripple outward in ways you never imagined. You stand in the doorway of your life, the morning sun washing the kitchen table where once only a small envelope of folded bills lived. The quiet that used to be fear now holds a different sound, soft resolve. You remember the hush of your prayer room, the trembling confession that wanting more felt like betrayal. You remember the voice that pierced that hush, not condemning but clarifying, prosperity is a tool, not a trophy. In that moment the world shifted, the limits you'd accepted as holiness began to look like chains. Now the camera of your mind moves through days remade. You sit with a simple notebook and a fresh budget, sunlight on your hands, making space for stewardship. You speak out loud, I will seed wisely, I will give boldly, I will plan faithfully, and the words land like a promise. There are conversations with a mentor at a coffee table where wisdom is practical. Emergency fund first, debt reduction step by step, investments that honor your values. There are tender scenes too, a neighbor's fridge filled after a thoughtful grocery run, a teenager receiving a scholarship funded by your small, consistent gifts, a church program launched because someone decided that resources were meant to multiply love. Emotion rises and falls, relief, courage, occasional doubt, but each choice becomes a quiet act of worship. You learn that humility isn't hiding from increase, it's using increase to magnify care. Generosity becomes the evidence of obedience, budget's the map of intention, and business or work becomes worship when it serves others. You are no longer afraid to prosper because you can now see stewardship in every ledger's line. If this revelation stirred something inside you, promise yourself one small obedience today, a like that says this changed me, a commitment to one budgeting step, and the choice to keep learning. Subscribe and ring the bell so the next lesson, practical tools, prayers, and simple systems to grow both your soul and your finances, arrives when you're ready. Walk forward, God has given you more than money, He's given you a mission.